You are prepared to walk along. Yeah, it's better.
É só fazer assim. Calma.
I think the apresentação está for what you use. I never started in a day like this. Never. What is it? What is wrong? What about?
Vamos fazer isto. Isto funciona, não? Muito boa tarde a todos e a todas. Vamos dar início à lição anual da Finisterra 2023. Os cumprimentos ao diretor da Finisterra, o colega e amigo Marcelo Fragoso. Cumprimento também aqui um cumprimento especial ao meu colega do lado, o professor Nuno Costa, ao nosso convidado, a todos e a todas presentes, colegas, alunos, amigos, àqueles que nos estão a acompanhar também online, um cumprimento especial também. Enfim, costuma-se dizer aqui desde há muitos anos que o Centro de Estudos Geográficos é a joia da coroa do IGOT, e isso honra bastante o Centro de Estudos Geográficos, e eu acho que no mesmo sentido podemos dizer que a Finisterra é a joia da coroa do Centro de Estudos Geográficos. Okay, so if you don't mind, I will change now to English in order to respect our yeah, it's French is a little bit complicated. Yeah, okay. If you agree, I will follow in English. At the core of the dissemination strategy since 1965, Finisterra contributes to one of the major missions of the CEG, the promotion and dissemination of geographical knowledge. Finisterra published original research work carried out by our research team, which are organized in 6 research groups, but Finisterra aspires to more than dissemination of our research results, being increasingly attractive to international authors. Finisterra is indexed now in Scopus and in the Emergency Sources Citation Index, ESCI, and got its first impact factor this year. The CAG leadership actively supports several dissemination activities organized by our research groups, but this annual lecture organized by the Finisterra stands as the CAG flagship scientific event. It is in fact the only event for which the CAG leadership takes on the role of the main organizer. The annual lecture has proven in the past years to be a stunning initiative, which has brought us outstanding research and scholars. This year we receive and welcome Jean-Paul Rodrigue. We thank him very much for his willingness to share with us some of his scientific concerns. I am sure that the Finisterra annual lecture will continue to be a reference in CAG and IGOT activities in the coming years. So thank you very much and enjoy your lecture. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2023 edition of the Finisterra's annual lecture. Thank you for your presence. The annual lecture is an event dedicated to the promotion of Finisterra. For us, is an important moment for our journal, and we welcome a prominent geographer to speak on current or emerging scientific issues. The lecture projects Finisterra into the wider space of scientific journals in geography and beyond. I would like to say that Finisterra publishes continuously in several languages research articles in the field of geography and spatial management, following the open access model and without charge to our authors. It is indexed, as Professor José said, namely in Scopus and as an emerging source at Clarivate Web of Science core collection. So we are proud to have a prestigious editorial committee that is gender balanced and with representatives from all areas within geography. In this edition, we bring transports and logistics geography to the annual lecture. Our goal was to invite a geographer with great scientific prestige and at the same time with the ability to communicate science to a diverse and wide-ranging public, and whose research would focus on a key topic for the scientific community and society. And we are delighted that Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue from the Hofstra University, New York, USA, accepted the invitation to be our esteemed guest speaker. The transport geography of e-commerce, Amazon's distributional hierarchy. The lecture title is clearly an interesting topic, attracting a diverse public of researchers, professors, students, and other participants. I'm happy to say that more than 200 registered participants in this session from Portugal and abroad. I'm very happy, and I would like to thank to the publicity team. Have done a really good work. Thank you for that. Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue is a highly prestigious academic and author of reference books in the field of transport geography, and we expect this annual lesson will be an inspiring occasion to start possible collaborations and to develop network research. I have invited my colleague, Nuno Costa, as an expert on transport geography, networks, and mobility issues to follow up with an introduction to Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue. And I wish you a good annual lecture. And please stay after the lesson because we have other important moments to share with you. Thank you.
Well, hello. Hello, everyone. First of all, I must thank Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue to be here with us to talk about an important issue that is the relation of distribution goods and e-commerce. Professor Jean-Paul Rodrigue is a very relevant scholar in geography, especially in transport geography. He has a PhD in transport geography from the Université de Montréal. He is taught at Hofstra University in New York since 1999, and his research topics focus on transport and economics, and they related to logistic, intermodal transport, and the global distribution of goods. It's also an expert in maritime transport, and his work is very important to all who make some research on transport everywhere, but in particularly the transport, maritime transport. He has more than 7 books, 32 book chapters, more than 60 peer-reviewed articles, and is among the 2% of most cited academics in the world. He started with an important issue in 1998, when he published it freely in the web, transport geography on the web. Then when they moved to OSPRA, to the geography of transport systems, and freely supported this introduction to transport geography. I use a lot, many of you probably use this main issue that was very, very important to the study of transport geography. His work, it's not only on the academia, he is also invited by the Secretary of State of the United States to be member of the advisor board of the U.S. Merchant Maritime Academy, and he also some consulting from several organizations and institutions around the world. So his work about port regionalization is a main work that we cannot avoid when we study this kind of materials. So he have also the Edward Ullman Award for contribution on the field of transportation geography, and in 2022, and was distinguished as fellow at Agler for advanced study from Texas A&M University. So thank you very much for being with us and share your knowledge with all, and thank you very much.
Não, saiu daí. O microfone que estava aí saiu. 1, 2.
Tem que considerar estas coisas.
Ok. Okay, it's the wrong direction, but that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, we're now back to our regular schedule programming. This interruption was brought to you by, I don't know, but okay. So sorry about that. As I mentioned, technology creates complexity. So let's move on. So everybody's fine now on Zoom? You can hear me? Yes, is there chat? It's chat going up. It means yes. Okay. Ready? No, I'm not. Okay. So here's the story. I was before this snafu happened. I was telling you about some of the impacts of e-commerce in terms of the distribution. That is, consumption is based upon distributional capabilities, and also the very important impact of e-commerce on the value of real estate. It devaluates a segment of the real estate footprint, which is tend to be store-based, and it revalue the distributional aspect of real estate. And the third part of the major impact of e-commerce is the creation of new specialized facility. If you were asking me, let's say 10, 15 years ago, what is the e-fulfillment center? What is a sortation center? What is an urban logistic depot? I would say, I have no idea or little idea. So in recent times, a whole new array of facilities came into existence specifically designed for e-commerce. So you have a physical footprint which has been created, and since you create a new physical footprint, you create a new geography of these facilities because they have their own, I would say, mode of operation. And so that's a third aspect we're going to look at. Last and not least, and this is something we've noticed in the United States, is a very strong process of what we call vertical integration. What I mean by this, when we talk about vertical integration, it's a process where you take control of different elements of the supply chain. So when United States, we observe the same thing in China and other parts of the world. Again, I'm a little bit less familiar with Europe, but I will assume similar processes are taking place within Europe, is when an e-commerce platform start to emerge, become big enough, they start to take control of different aspects of the supply chain. You become with e-fulfillment center and you say, okay, I'm going to now have my own trucks, my own warehouses, my own last mile facilities, and Amazon, my own airline, and also my own shipping company. Amazon and e-commerce facilities are what we call control freaks. They want to control everything because the more they take control, the more they internalize the distribution process, the more they can guarantee and I would say have a better overview or control the logistics and make sure when they say it's going to be delivered tomorrow afternoon around 2 p.m., it's going to be delivered tomorrow afternoon around 2 p.m. So that's a fourth process, which has been a very, very powerful, again, vertical integration. So let's move on. Okay. Whoops. There's some kind of a delay. So here we go. So again, I'm going to speak very briefly here. That is, in a conventional retail logistic, again, it's pretty straightforward to understand. The whole logistic process ends up at the retail store where the retailer maintains in-store inventory and the customer is responsible for the last mile logistics. You're the one who organize yourself. You go to the store by bus, by car, whatsoever. You organize these last mile logistics. The only function of the store is to make sure, based upon their locational choices, that each store is properly supplied. And most of the major retailers around the world have become expert at fulfillment, making sure that everything arrives and you have a whole array of facilities that have been designed to do that. So when e-commerce arrived, it created, you could say, a platform where an e-retailer was maintaining a network of EFCs, which are e-fulfillment facilities. And based upon the nature, the origin, and the type of the order, I would say the order or the assignment was put to a specific distribution center, which may not be close to the final point of destination. So that's something which is actually, I would say, very, very interesting. And of course, with e-commerce, it is the responsibility of the e-retailer to take care of home deliveries, to bring those boxes to your doorstep or to some kind of an intermediary location nearby. But ideally to, you could say, the customer's location. So that's pretty well known. But also, e-commerce has very interesting impact on the cost structure of retail. Most of these impacts are deflationary, although you might not see them very, I would say, very well. That is, it is something very interesting. A lot of the value of conventional retail is based upon the principle of information asymmetry. The buyer does not know much, has limited choices and is limited to what is available physically in the store. That's classic. Now with e-commerce, this very, I would say, significant barrier, which allow many retailers to have some kind of a higher cost structure, has been removed, because maybe some of you have done that in your life. You go to the store, you check the good, you go take your cell phone and say, is it cheaper somewhere else? And if it's somewhere else, I like it, I'm going to buy it online. That's something which I would say very interesting. Also, again, the search cost has been reduced quite a lot. The time you spend. Have you heard about something called shopping? You go to a store, you browse the inventory, the whole thing, which is based upon the time and effort spent at selecting something, has been reduced quite substantially. Furthermore, the cost of entry has been reduced. Technically, if you have the will, any of you could start some kind of an e-business if you wish, and using some kind of a well-known platform and capable of supplying these platforms. So those transactional costs or the entry barrier has been removed quite substantially. In the past, the entry barrier at the minimum was, can I afford to buy or to lease I would say, a location? And that comes with a high entry cost. Let's see. There we go. We're back. We're back in business. Other impact. The menu cost. In the past, the cost of maintaining and updating the price of the inventory was very high. Each time a store was changing its price structure, somebody had to go physically in the rows and put that stuff. Now, e-commerce facilities and e-retailer can change the price and the inventory in real time, almost done in a dynamic fashion at virtually no cost, which allows them to play, I would say, quite interesting games, to say the least. They can adjust the price structure based upon what is left in the inventory, and also from where people are buying, sometimes based upon, we say in the United States, based upon your zip code. Some zip code are wealthier, so you can play a little bit that game, although they don't. How extensive this is, again, it remains, it's not, I would say, easy to prove, but there are all sorts of process which have been put in place to dynamically adjust the price of things. So again, this is coming from the literature. This is well known. What is a little bit more interesting, and that's very difficult to find, but I was able to find information comparing, again, the price structure of e-commerce versus retail. Tough to say. Again, I was able to find an example about the cost structure, and overall, e-commerce, mostly because it does not have to pay what is the most important cost in retail? It is, of course, labor and lease of a facility. Those are two very important costs. E-commerce is capable of avoiding that substantially. And by doing that, it is capable of reducing the cost structure, either by selling at the same price and having a higher profit margin, but better off to reduce the price and gain market share. That's a little bit the idea. You have two different cost structure, and fundamentally, the standard retail supply chain have a very difficult time competing with e-commerce, simply because they deal with a different geography, they deal with different assets and different labor, I would say, cost structure that retail cannot mitigate. If you're an e-commerce facility, you're looking for, let's say, a low-cost price, you go in the suburbs. You find yourself an area far away where the value of the land is low, and you can now start your operation at a lower price. And this is exactly what Amazon has done in the United States. It has built its major e-fulfillment center always in suburban area at the intersection of major highways with a lower cost structure. And by doing that, has been able to have a better control of the cost structure and improve its competitiveness. Again, this is also very interesting. So let's look now at some of the impact. Let's see. You're not reading in Portuguese, but there are ways I can hide this in the back. Again, it's the way. Perfect. Here we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, this is an example again for the United States. This is fascinating. The amount of letters and being carried with the United States has been steadily declining as people move towards electronic mail, e-commerce, electronic communication. As time moves on, essentially the amount of, you could say, mail has declined by 50% in about 15 years or so. At the same time, what we call USPS, which is United States Postal Services, on the other side, the amount of parcels being shipped has increased quite substantially. So that's something which is very interesting. People were saying, oh, the United States Postal Services are in very big financial problem. That's true. But right now, they are in a transition from moving away from the standard classic mail, where everything you receive is simply garbage, advertisement. You just take it, you open your mailbox, and then you throw it in the garbage right away. Okay, that's usually what you have to do. And sometimes, oh, a letter, interesting. Who's that? But oh, it's a bill, and then, of course, in the garbage. So that's something which is very interesting. If you notice, USPS, FedEx, UPS, which is United Parcel Services, and now also Amazon, have seen a radical growth of the number of parcel which has been moved within the United States. So it's seen on one side, you have a decline of a form of physical distribution of letter, but on the other side, you see an increase in the physical distribution of parcels. So that's simply what this little chart is telling you. So let's have a look. And that's why, I'm sorry, I don't have data for Portugal, but the United States, the last time I checked, and it's still relatively the same, has the highest real estate, or you could say retail footprint per capita in the world. That is for each American, you have about 23, 24 square foot of retail store. Canada, United States, sorry, Australia, you see the example. While most European countries have a very low. So the point I would like to make here is, for based on what I've seen that needs to be needs to be proven, is the transition towards e-commerce in Europe is likely to have much less of an impact on the existing retail footprint, because at start it was relatively low. So therefore, e-commerce will have not too much of an impact on what is existing. In the United States, it's exactly the opposite. The retail footprint is so high, and a lot of these stores are quite marginal in terms of their profit margins. As soon as e-commerce enter, you see an increase in store closures. We call that in the United States the retail apocalypse. That is, as e-commerce enter, more and more store went bankrupt up to the pandemic, up to 2020, where it was, you could say, almost a bloodbath. And 12,000 stores in the United States closed that year because of this. So part of it is because of this transition. Let's see how much time do I have left. Okay, I have 2 hours. So let's move on with now e-commerce. Oh, I'll skip this. So trying to link this with geography. Many of you, again, you study geography, you may be very well aware of the classic central place theory that tells you that services and the type of services, many of which are associated with retail, have some kind of a spatial hierarchy, from important places offering a very complex array of services over a big market area to small places that offer a small array of services to a small area. So, and this applies pretty well to retail. A classic hierarchy of things. Again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't very well, but still, it's there. Now the question is, and again, I still have to work more on this. Will distribution center and the shift towards e-commerce allow us to move away from that central places theory, which might become less and less valid as we shift towards distribution, towards what we call a distributional place theory, where the organization or you're still going to have a hierarchy. There's always a hierarchy. The fundamental law of regional sciences is Pareto. Pareto is in everything. That is, 20% of the sample always account for 80% of the activity. In pretty much every system that you look at. I do a lot of work in port. 20% of the ports of the world, 80% of the activity. 20% of the airports, 80% of the activity. 20% of the academics, 80% of the research. Always. So when you have this distribution, which classically in central place theory, created this hexagonal-like type of hierarchy, a similar process is going to take place with e-commerce. And we already have actually in the United States, I could call it super Pareto. Again, or Pareto, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, where Amazon accounts for, by itself, one account for 80%. That's something that people are not aware with e-commerce, and I would say digitization is, it favors an hyper concentration. Google has everything. Social media, the same thing. Less and less platform. You see a concentration of power in a concentration of distribution or capabilities with this. So this is actually what seems to be happening. The hierarchy is different because in the case of distribution place theory, as soon as e-commerce enter, you see an increase Okay. Anyway, that relationship is very different. Again, centrality in central place is based upon a certain level of competition. In distributional place theory, it's based upon a form of accessibility. And also in e-commerce, it goes in one direction only, from the supply and all the stages in between. Of course, there's reverse logistic. And this is not well discussed, or you could call it a circular type of mechanism, but those are not very well understood so far. So that's, I would say, my theory at this point in time. We're going to try to look at it using the example of Amazon, because this is exactly what Amazon is doing. It is building a replica of the central place theory, but using distribution, a hierarchy of distribution center in the process, with the exact same purpose, is to make available retail good to the same distribution of the population. At the end, it's the same thing. People live wherever they are, and you have to build a hierarchy to build a hierarchy of services to do something like that. So Amazon has replicated that. And here are the major elements, or the three major steps. That is, and those are logistic steps. Procurement and fulfillment. That is, Amazon must buy and procure stuff and have, you could call that, points of entry for those goods in its system. And then the distribution aspect is usually assumed with what we call e-fulfillment center. Then sortation center are, in a sense, the analog to the post office or the postal services, when you have letters and you have to sort them out. And the distribution network of Amazon has become so complicated that Amazon built facilities which sole purpose is to receive things and say, okay, this is going to this neighborhood. And then last mile logistic, the establishment of what we call delivery station. Those places where the parcel are going to be put on vans, bicycles, or whatsoever for last mile of delivery. And Amazon control the whole process from what we call the inbound cross-docking facility, where containers arrive from China next to a port. They open the container, you could call it destack them, put them on pallets or different trucks, and then they route the cargo to the e-fulfillment facilities, which now receive orders, ship these orders, and now Amazon, when it's shipped, it make a decision. Do I route this internally, or do I route this using a 3PL, which is a third-party logistics service provider, such as FedEx or UPS, or do I send it to USPS? The more time passes, the more Amazon routes this internally. It takes more and more as it builds the network. And this is something we have never seen in retail before. In retail, the retailers do not control the demand. They serve the demand. Amazon controls a part of the demand. But by this, I mean it has a big capability to understand where the demand is coming from and predict this demand, which most retailers can do. However, Amazon has the capability to route the freight within its own system to maximize the efficiency of its own system first, and then gives the excess to other. I've never, as far as I can tell, I could be, maybe somebody can correct me, I've never seen that taking place before. And this is, I would say, a very strong power to command, I would say, the hierarchy, the distribution capabilities that Amazon has been capable of internalizing. So that's the first thing. We're going to move first. Where the data is coming from? I was able to get an inventory of all the facilities in the United States. There's more than 1,200 of them. I got an address, and for each and one of them, I was able to plot a point on top on the roof. And also, I was able to get access to the year the facility was open, how much square footage or square meters, and put this in a GIS and run the analysis. So this is what I did, essentially. So let's have a look. So overall, this is the total footprint of Amazon in the United States. Those are all the type of facilities that Amazon have built. Some are important, some are less important. Amazon also move into cold chain logistics. That is groceries. It's called Amazon Fresh. So you can order grocery. It's moving all sorts of things. But the most important facilities are inbound cross-docking facilities, fulfillment centers, and delivery station, the last mile logistic. And each and one of them has a specific size, which is associated with its function. And therefore, the specific footprint and a specific locational dynamics. And the locational dynamics of each and one of them is different. So let's have a look. This is the growth of the Amazon footprint over the years. And if Amazon has remained in the same business that it did when it opened up, it will be bankrupt. Amazon started up as a distributor of books and music and movies. So when I started shopping on Amazon, I was buying books, I was buying CDs, I was buying DVDs. It's been a long time since I bought a book, since I bought a CD or a movie physically. I have an old DVD collection at home. I don't know what to do with it anymore. So when the writing was on the wall, so in the late 1990s, early 2000, Amazon started to shift away from this into retail. It moved gradually, started to build a footprint, and as move on, it started the first process of Amazon, what we call horizontal integration. Horizontal integration is essentially you start from a specific location and you start to ship the shipping costs are high. And as you grow, you expand horizontally, that is, you cover your market. You cover, and then when you finish to cover your market effectively, now what you switch away from horizontal to vertical. That is, you control the supply chain. This is exactly what Amazon did at the end. It's not that clear here, but most of the facilities that Amazon built initially were e-fulfillment center, warehouses from which I ship my order. And then when the pandemic hit, look at what Amazon was building the most. Delivery stations. What is a delivery station? Is last mile logistics. You can see the impact of the pandemic in 2020. In 2 years, Amazon added more real estate than something like 7 or 8 years of growth were compressed in 1 or 2 years because of the surge of the demand. And this is basically data in the United States. That is the growth, the share of e-commerce, which has grown during the pandemic to around 16% of all retail sales. And then when the pandemic was over, people, yay, let's go back to shop, I would say. But that's also a fundamental question. I was discussing that with some colleagues here today, is when the full transition to e-commerce is going to be completed. The question will be when. Is it going to be in 10, 15, 20 years? Who knows? What's going to be the share of retail sales that e-commerce is going to be accounting for? Right now, 15, 16% in the United States. In Europe, I don't know. I suspect it is something similar, maybe a little bit higher. Maybe some of you have figures for Portugal. The question is, if it moved, let's say, to 25, 30%, think about the amount of warehousing this is going to require, the amount of trucks, the amount of last mile logistic facilities. And a lot of it in the United States is going to be, again, what retail loses, e-commerce gain. So you're going to have to find ways to reuse all real estate facilities. I've seen car dealership in the United States be reconverted into distribution centers. All sorts of things like that. So that's something which is very interesting to cities. I'm going to move on very quickly. This is basically how the e-commerce footprint of Amazon evolved in time. Again, I don't have too much time, but essentially the 1990s, the initial location, they were all, you say, why are these places? They were all places that did not tax e-commerce. If you're in California, Amazon was avoiding some places because if you were buying some or selling something, you have to pay a sales tax. You know, every state after that started to implement sales tax, but Amazon was locating itself to avoid such high costs and high taxation. And as time moved on, what Amazon did then is horizontal integration to cover the American market. And I can only tell you that right now, Amazon has completely covered the American market with its facilities. And again, so let's have a look at these facilities. The entry point of the system is what we call an inbound cross-docking facility. Those facilities, there's an example here, are pretty big, about 600,000 square foot on average. Again, I'm not sure about square meters. The goal of these facility is, this is where the cargo enters the system. This is where Amazon, when it receives shipments from all over the world, including within the United States, most of the goods are not going to the e-fulfillment center. Most of the goods are sent to these facilities, and these facilities take the container, take the full truckload, and break them down into batches that are sent to respective store. So if you look at the geography of these facilities, they tend to be located nearby major intermodal facilities, either ports or major rail facilities in the United States. Because this is essentially linked with the geography of American procurement, where the retail goods in the United States are coming from. And maybe 50% of them are coming from China. So therefore, Amazon has positioned its facilities to act as nearby where are the entry points. So that's the first aspect. Then the parcels or the cargo is moved to e-fulfillment centers. Those are, again, pretty big. Pretty much all of them have suburban location. And the major locational criteria is pretty simple, either nearby an highway or nearby a major parcel hub from a 3PL. And for Amazon, it does not care what is the good. It only cares about if the good is sortable or non-sortable. You say, what do we mean by that? Can the good be put in a box, or is the good has to be handled separately? So essentially, when you look at an Amazon warehouse, it is technically pure chaos or very organized chaos. In the sense, you're going to see everything. The only thing Amazon cares is, can I put this into a box? So if I can put this in a box, it is sortable. And therefore, everything which is sortable is going to be stored. So it could be toothpaste, pen, shoes, whatsoever. It does not matter. If it is sortable, it's going to be in this warehouse. If it is not sortable, it's going to be in another type of warehouse. There also is a level of specialization taking place, and that's a geography of it. And when you look at the distribution of the size, you see 3 peaks. So in this case, Amazon has built 3 types of facilities that handles this cargo. The level 3 is the big thing, which is non-sortable. The level 2 is sortable, which is heavy, which could be a television, a washing machine, carpet. And then the last facility, which is specialized, which can be watches or jewelry or sometimes shoes or baby formula, things which are very, very specialized. And here's what is absolutely amazing. I would like to draw your attention to that little square in the middle. You see that one right there? Which is called the weighted median center. For those of you who are familiar with GIS or locational theory, it is essentially, if I take all the location of all weighted by all the square footage in the United States, and I say, what is the center of this all? It is right here. And you know what this is? Yeah, Southern Illinois. Okay, well, wait a second. Here we go. We're back in business. This is just a few hundred kilometers from the demographic center of the United States. The distribution of the Amazon facility corresponds almost exactly to the distribution of the American population. I am shocked. Again, completely logical. And this works for every type of facility. The low distribution of this facility always correspond to the distribution of the population. And it tells, the message is very, very clear. Amazon has built a distributional hierarchy that is essentially replicated the central places of the United States, but now within Amazon. And the goal is very simple. Amazon wants to cover the American market as efficiently as possible with the least amount of facilities. And you will notice there is nothing here. Why there is nothing here? Because there's nobody living there. Again, as a geographer, pure e-commerce is something which is digital, non-physical. I am sorry. The physical reality of e-commerce replicates classic concepts of geography. Congratulations, your job or your existence is now more justified with e-commerce. Yay! So here we go. So as I mentioned before, the fundamental differences between sortable and non-sortable, that's essentially what Amazon cares about. What people order, can I put it in a box? And of course, if it's not perishable, of course, can I put it in a box or not? So if you order something from e-commerce, sometimes you'll be surprised. They put this with this. I order toothpaste, and it comes with an alarm clock, pretty much everything in the same box. Most of the time, it's coming from the same distribution center because Amazon only cares about, can I put this in a box or not? Because if I can put it in a box, no problem, I move it. Do I'm running out of time? I'll speak twice the speed. If it's non-sortable, you build. So this is what Amazon have done. The largest number of e-fulfillment center is now non-sortable. Because if something is big and bulky, like a television, guess what happens with the transportation cost? Higher. What is the impact of geography and distance? Higher. Therefore, you need to build more closer. So this is what we start to notice when you start to buy dishwasher, appliances, television, cat litter on Amazon, or big bags of dog food. It's heavy. Therefore, now Amazon start to have a spatial hierarchy that also minimize transportation costs, particularly apparent on the most heaviest type of good, which are large, non-sortable type of goods. When you start to have small sortable, the number of facility reduced because much more flexible. So this is, again, classic retail consideration that starts to be noticed in the geography of e-commerce. Again, when I started, wow, I wasn't expecting that. As I mentioned, Amazon is moving into air. The geography of this is Amazon is now to start to build its own air hub. Gigantic facilities that's chosen 3 locations in the United States: Cincinnati, Texas, and California. And of course, it services many other airports. The idea is to build regional air freight distribution network that replicates customer demand, because of course you won't shift off stuff by, how can I say that, by air for very long distance. So Amazon, what it does, and when it arrives in the e-fulfillment center and it needs to be moved by air, it's going to reallocate according to its major air hub. Again, this is still in progress, so we're not exactly sure what is the spatial strategy. The next thing about Amazon is the sortation center. That is, every single one of them, almost every single one of them, is built at the intersection of the central area of the city and the suburb. The distribution center and the e-fulfillment facilities are far away in the suburb. The last mile logistic facility are within the city, in neighborhood. And the sortation center is at the intersection point because it connects the wider system to the global or the national to the local. And here's the geography of it. And at some point, there was an equidistant distribution of the sortation center along here, which we call, let's say, the but the I-95 corridor, let's see, this is very sluggish. This is what we call the I-95 corridor, which is the biggest highway in the United States that connects the north and the south of it, with all the major cities of the US East Coast. And when Amazon was starting to build sortation center, they were building the center at an equidistant location along this corridor. I forgot the exact measure, but every 200 or 300 miles, there was a sortation center. It was like a string of pearls. And as a geographer, I was absolutely shocked. Amazon was perfectly replicating an equidistant retail strategy when it deals something like that. And of course, now the system has been more complex. This has a little bit disappeared, but still, it's a little bit the same story. Last and not least, we call delivery station, last mile, nearby. And now this is the most prevalent facility of Amazon in the United States. They have about half of the facility of Amazon are now that. That is where you take something from a sortation center, you put it on a van, and then the van do its last mile, its routing. So Amazon has now control every single aspect of this. All of these facilities were built less than 5 or 6 years ago. 5 to 6, 7 years ago, these facilities did not exist. They were all built because Amazon was taking control to a horizontal integration process of the last mile logistics, and therefore need to build a new element in its distribution hierarchy to fit into this. And sometimes these facilities and the sortation center, Amazon make a decision, I can route to the postal services as well. It's more complicated than that. If I had 5 or 6 hours, I would give you more. I did an analysis for New York and Los Angeles, which are 2 small cities in the United States, very, very small in the United States. And in both cases, what we notice, e-fulfillment center in the suburbs, sortation centers in the central area, and the sortation center tend to be at the intersection of those 2 places. So you have some kind of a hierarchy, and I was able to calculate the area. Central place here said 3 to 4. In LA, I was observing the area was 2.3 size. The area of B, which is the sortation, sorry, not the sortation, but the delivery station was 3 times as big as the area occupied by the e-fulfillment center. In New York, about twice. So there's some kind of my goal is to apply it for the whole United States and able to calculate what is the difference in the market area of the different hierarchies and verify if this matches with classic central place theory or not, or to what extent. Maybe yes, maybe no. That would be interesting. Again, I have a few minutes more. I'll skip this. This is okay. I'll skip this one. But I'm just going to pay your attention to this one. This is data that was collected, I would say, through interesting means. But I was able for several years to calculate, to see all the deliveries in a major demand place, a big apartment building with lots of apartment. And in terms of who was the carrier, what I've noticed is as time move on, the share of the 3PLs was going down, while the share of Amazon was going up, which is to be expected, Amazon as a carrier. But look at the other chart. Weekly deliveries, every day. Who's the carrier? Look at Amazon, which is in orange. Amazon deliver every single day. And every single day you get almost the exact same number. Even though the demand on a weekly basis, particularly on Saturdays and Sunday, fluctuates. You know what this means? It means that Amazon has internalized the distribution and it routes the cargo to make sure that its facilities and its van are constantly used. And each time Amazon increases its supply, it can readjust the demand to fill up the supply. And this is what Amazon has been doing gradually every year. It's routing more and more freight internally. And I was discussing that with other people in logistics. They saw that. They were absolutely shocked. Because when you USPS, when you FedEx, actually FedEx and particularly USPS do not deliver on that building over the weekend because it's not worth it. There's not enough demand. But Amazon is capable of generating the demand on the weekend. Simply, you order on a Thursday. You say, oh, sorry, it won't be on the Monday. But Amazon now are going to put my asset over the weekend and be able to do these weekend deliveries, while the postal services or the other 3PL say, sorry, I cannot, there's no market proposition. When I saw that, I was completely shocked by this process of internalization of the process. One last thing before I let you go away, run away. I was able to estimate based upon 27,000 deliveries at one location, about 27,000 deliveries. What was the time of the delivery of the parcel at the building facility? And at what time the parcel was picked up by its owner? And this has a very gigantic impact on planning and architecture, because the numbers do not change. The peak delivery time in the United States, I suspect it is exactly the same in Europe, is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. This is where the bulk of the delivery are taking place. Of course, you can guess why this is that time frame. To avoid rush hour. You go to work between, let's say, at Portugal, maybe a little bit later, okay? But in the United States, for me, if I don't leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning, I don't go to university. Or I either leave at 6 or I leave at 10. Because otherwise, I'm going to be reading bumper stickers. I'm going to be stuck in a commute which is going to last me 2 hours instead of 45 minutes. So I plan accordingly. But in this case, the e-commerce is the same thing. You deliver between 10 a.m. and noon. However, think about that. When do people pick their parcel? When they come back home. And exactly, it's a little bit more distributed, but the peak is between 4 and 8 p.m. Therefore, as e-commerce grow, as the number of parcels being delivered to buildings and houses grow, particularly New York and cities, the inventory accumulates where? In the lobby. And you cannot change that. On average, the time difference between delivery and the pickup is 8 hours. And this is not going to change. So therefore, as you switch this inventory away from the retail store to the warehouses, to the e-commerce in the suburbs and so on and so forth, you are also switching this inventory in the buildings to the lobby. In my building, they had to shut down one apartment and convert this apartment into a warehouse. Because during Thanksgiving, there were so much parcels that they were running out of space. So for urban planning, this is going to be a gigantic challenge, is to consider this consumption. You cannot change that. The distributor, sorry, there's rush hour. I'm going to deliver on average between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's what I want to do. Otherwise, late in the evening or very early in the morning. Otherwise, meanwhile, what do? They sort the parcel, they organize the activity, and they dispatch, and then they send the drivers. And then the driver come back in 2 p.m., and then they do for the next day. So this inventory accumulates in the house. In the United States, if you have single family home, it accumulates in the porch. And now the amount of theft has exploded. You have to find ways to deal with this. But in Europe, single family home are much less common. So this is going to have, when you look at this data, take 8 hours, make those calculations, square footage. This is how much space you're going to need in the lobby or somewhere nearby to accumulate the demand. And if the demand switch from 15% to 25, 30%, 8 hours multiplied by that volume, it's going to clog things up. With this said, that's pretty much what I had to say today. And that is my conclusion. E-commerce is changing the central place theory in very interesting ways. It's creating what I suggest, a distributional place theory, a hierarchy, which is on facilities. This hierarchy, this organization has very important impact on the urban spatial structure. It manifests itself in very different ways, from the suburbs all the way down to the lobby of your apartment building. And all of this will need to be managed. And the more you do this, the more e-commerce firms are taking control of the supply chain, and they replicate a retail hierarchy into a distribution hierarchy. It's the same story, but the footprint is different. It devalues things and it revalue other things. It's going to revalue your lobby. It's going to revalue your suburb and it's going to devalue maybe not necessarily your corner store, it depends, but the medium-sized shopping mall or something like that. In the United States, already taking place, and who knows how far it's going to go ahead, I would say. With this said, again, I hope you find that somewhat interesting, and if you have questions, I'm going to be happy to not answer them. Thank you. So maybe we can.
Yes. Thank you very much for your brilliant thought. And I invited who wants to pose a question. Hugo.
Yeah.
Anyway, questions? Annoying questions?
One thing, especially in Portugal, you don't have you have positive deliveries. You always deliver it to someone. That creates a lot of burden on the delivery. So if the distributor is there, someone is not at home, they won't order it. So Yeah. So there's no theft because there is no opportunity.
Again, I have the data, but I know in the United States, the amount of failed delivery, it depends on the neighborhood. E-commerce firm love apartment building because there's always, you could say a doorman, we use a doorman or a person which is there to account of this, but usually 30%. So the more you have e-commerce, the more you have those failed delivery, and the more this has to accumulate. It takes space somewhere where it's going to be.
Yeah, but in this case, so this small note I wanted to point about here, you don't drop very, very. One of the things is that because of that, local commerce is another guy because we cannot buy home, we are not there.
Understood.
They will be all the off by the and the grocery shop. So it helps. Another thing, what this make is that it's forced to be by feeding the grocery shop. I don't want that something like that. Even if it's not this thing
Yeah. Again, in the future, it's going to be a lot of incentives. It's been observed in Europe with those, you call it those lockers.
Yeah.
A lot of incentive. Is there a way we can position this? But at the end, people prefer things on their doorstep. I suspect in the United States, the lockbox are popular on campuses and very high density area. But the rest of the place, people say, I'm using e-commerce. Why I'm using it? Because I want it home. Because I don't want to go out. That's the purpose of it. Yeah. But again, there's going to be a whole array of, they can offer you a choice. This is what you pay if you get delivered to your home. This is what you're going to pay if you want to deliver it to a nearby store or locker box or something. There's going to be an interesting stratification based upon how sensitive you are to price and also possibly time as well.
Guarda. Zip code.
Yeah, thank you for your question. You ask a question about a very sensitive topic, which is essentially because we never know, we never faced this problem before, is what would be the proper term to label this? Is it becoming an oligopoly or monopoly? And when this happens, it creates a regulatory response. And that's, these days, again, they don't say it very well, but my suspicion is one of the Amazon's biggest fear is to be labeled as somebody who has a monopolistic type of control and being forced, as we've seen in the past in the United States, to be broken down. That could be a possible, again, I'm not sure how far in the future this could happen, because Amazon will try the best it can to maintain the appearance of a form of competitiveness, because if you want, you can sell through Amazon yourself. You could say, oh, I'm selling whatsoever. But this is what we notice. Amazon has what we call some kind of a marketplace, which opened a form of very active competition. But as soon as a player is very effective and very popular, guess what Amazon does? Buys it and internalize it. And again, the regulators are somewhat confused because we have never seen that happening before. Regulators know how to regulate, and you could say anti-competitive behavior in standard retail. We have a lot of mechanism in place to know what it is, to identify it, and to say, hey, this is not fair. And the store will say, sorry, there's no competition because there's not demand. There's also a mechanism, but for e-commerce, we do not. But we're going to find out. And as the share of e-commerce comes out, there's going to be a growing amount of question here. What's happening here? And as the price difference between e-commerce and retail starts to shrink, it's like Uber and taxi. In the United States, when I started using Uber was 50% cheaper than taxi.
Yeah.
So taxi in New York, I have the data, disappeared, collapsed. But now as I move on, Uber, because of regulation, all sorts of things, the price is now not very much lower. And we're likely going to observe that with e-commerce as time move on. But we don't know what is the share. And in my opinion, the market share is going to be very important. If e-commerce take a higher share, it's going to push the regulator in. Because people say, hey, this is unfair, monopolistic, price control. People say, I have no choices. And then there might be some people say, hey, actually, we pay 25% higher than we would pay if it was retail. We don't, again, I'm just making this up. And this may happen in the future. But Amazon is very smart. And they're going to play a very close eye to prevent any form of appearance of such behavior. Because they know very well if they behave in such a fashion, the regulator arrive, bam, bam, bam. They don't want this.
Paul?
The questionnaire candidacy that would underline this kind of difficulty. But what we know about the other slides, you just showed that the profit margin in this kind of e-commerce is much higher than in the retail store. Well, my question is whether we are not just in the transfer of revenue from one kind of package to another, and adding to the 4.1% that's mentioned. The other is more of mine. Which kind of stores typical of are floating more than others? Mentioned
yeah.
And are we using this or not using the revenue like this?
Yeah. Again, thank you for your two questions. For what I know, and again, I've been observing with the digitization, people tend to be very enthusiastic about digitization, that. But again, to reiterate what I just said initially, the more you digitize, the more you favor concentration. So the more you push for e-commerce, the more you favor concentration. That is an unintended consequence of that. To go back to the structure, again, it is very difficult because the e-commerce firm don't want you to know. You do not know how the sausage is made. Those are very rough estimate for a pair of jeans in this case. And we initially found out that it was that structure. I don't know what it is for phones or for this or for a mouse or for a computer. I don't know in this case, but I'm quite confident that by being capable of playing with a real estate footprint, which is lower cost, which is automated in the suburb, that e-commerce has been able to gain substantial price reduction, which allow A, to reduce the cost so we compete, or to internalize the profit, and you don't tell that too much with the others. But by internalizing, by doing that, you concentrate things. What was the other part of your question about?
What kind of sort of
Oh, yeah, yes, thank you. I must say I've not paid too much attention, but the answer is vaguely would be everything which is marginal in terms of profit. The most tend to be the most apparel, shoes, basic electronics, anything which is, I would say, spur of the moment, competitive with low profit margin, tend to be the most vulnerable. That's why less so for grocery store, of course. It has very little impact on groceries, but it has very big impact in the United States on the big chain apparel, selling clothing, that was the biggest impact, or you could say regular consumer goods that people tend to have, I would say, a delay in the gratification process. Is what I mean by that. Maybe some of you know pretty well that 50% of all the retail sales are spur of the moment purchases. That is, you see it, you grab it. There is a whole psychology behind this, to position, to advertise, which I must say is tend to be partly targeted at a specific gender. That is true. And now with e-commerce, the gratification process was a little bit removed, so people have to pay more time. And what e-commerce was very concerned about when it began is there was a lot of people that purchased something with the spur of the moment and then regret it and then press cancel your order, because you can cancel until the item ship. By internalizing, Amazon was able to reduce the shipping time, yes, and replicate the instant gratification model into the e-commerce platform. I was trying to wonder, again, there's a lot of things behind that, but one aspect is this: 50% of retail sale, when it's not, okay, I buy milk, I need to buy food, is, oh, I walk on, oh, that's nice. Well, I like it. I didn't know that. And then you grab it. And how can you replicate that to e-commerce? Is you reduce the time it takes to cancel the order as much as you can, and you do that by internalizing the distribution and by controlling it. Of course, there's a limit. It's still going to say you click, it's not going to appear. But they try as much as they can. I would say that's brilliant. They're really, really, really smart. They have people who do operation research and they replicate every theory we know in geography. It's been replicated intuitively sometimes, just simply by behaving rationally in all the stuff we've been knowing as geographers for decades. And now they also apply market psychology. Everything is mixed to become e-commerce. Again, it's an amazing topic. I absolutely love it, I would say, because this happens once in a lifetime. This transition happens once. You know, it's not going to happen again. When this is over, it's going to be mature. We're going to understand the logic very well. And here's the geography of e-commerce, and it's what it is. It doesn't change. That's the story. But meanwhile, we have to invent it. Oh.
Fascinated by the principle, in particular about the predictable information. So in a way, it's richer and richer because we have the safety of people that you see those they want to need notes and they have to see those now. But the problem they have now is being tweaked. So how that impacts on the local and regional economy, one of the questions, or that they were saying there's a transition that on the other way, we are seeing the same, but aggravating the power concentration in.
Okay, that's a good point. To answer or to try to answer your first, you could say, comment about the concentration and fair enough, but you have to look at this proposition. Okay, think about Jeff Bezos, richest man in the world. Oh, that's so unfair. I'm very skeptical about that. Sitting with Bill Gates, all of these people will love to bash them. Oh, those evil capitalistic exploiting the workers. Okay, fair enough, but there's an accounting. Okay. True, the accumulation of wealth and the concentration of wealth has been quite impressive. However, what value was given in exchange? My assumption, and I think it's been proven, is the value that was given in exchange surpasses the wealth that was given. Because if it was not the case, I would not be shopping on Amazon because I see a benefit. It benefits everybody, of course, with those concentration mechanisms. But at the economic level, at the society level, I suspect, again, we can argue about that, that the transfer of value goes towards actually the customer who gets goods, variety, a huge diversity of things at a reasonable price, at the time which is convenient. So there's a benefit of this. And again, it's a complex equation because each stage since the Industrial Revolution was the same thing with the Rockefeller. Each stage, you get a concentration of wealth, but on the other side, an exchange of value. Otherwise, this will not take place. People will be revolting if you don't get anything in exchange. What do I get? I pay, let's say, $400 or $500 for it. And in exchange of that, I get a much more convenient life where I can synchronize everything much more efficiently. So there's an exchange of value. In my opinion, I gain more value by paying $500 plus all the subscription in my life than I pay for this. Otherwise, I will refuse this exchange. So what's the first part? Can you repeat the second part because I got entangled into this passionately? Yeah. Oh, on regional development. Thank you. Could be the case. Again, other retailers are competing with Amazon, some quite effectively. This, you could say that's reshuffling as disadvantage some places, but also advantages some places which have high accessibility. If you're in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, for the last 25 years, there've been massive investment in warehousing and a lot of jobs being created because of that. Of course, these jobs also been lost somewhere else. And we are not fully aware of the full accounting of input, output, gain and losses that I cannot answer. But at the end, my suspicion is irrespective of all of that, we're going to get a positive transfer of surplus value, but some places will get more, some places will get less. And it's going to be our job to understand what the hell is happening, how this is working itself out. And if there are ways that we could help mitigate this in a way which is less, you could say, unjust, unequitable, this is unfair, there's too much concentration. You maximize your utility, but you externalize things. So we're going to have, some of us are going to have to be, you could say, the watchers, and maybe give some advice about, because if you go in one way, we know there could be exaggeration and hyper concentration. We know that, but it's always a counter force. And it's going to be on us to look at it and say, this is correct, but this is not, or this is unfair. Very tough job to do, I would say.
Thank you very much. I must stop now. We need to follow to the next step. And thank you very much once again. And I ask you applause to Professor Rodriguez.
Again, thank you for Finisterra for the invitation, and thank you for your patience and your, I would say, your indulgence concerning technical issues. But
Thank you.
I'm more comfortable sitting down with my old age.
Professor, just to
Take a photo.
some symbolic gift
Can
from,
I eat it? No?
because
No.
our Geographical Research Center is commemorating 80 years.
Oh, years.
So,
As old as
He's
much as
a-
older as I am. Yeah. Thank you. That's
and
much
thank you for your
appreciated.
lecture.
Thank you. Want to take a photo? Yeah.
Gostava de convidar a todos para, na sequência da lição anual, há mais 2 momentos e eu gostava que assistissem. O primeiro é a divulgação dos premiados para o melhor artigo do ano, e a nossa presidente do júri, Patrícia Abrantes, vai falar-vos a partir deste momento.
Bom, vamos acelerar isto. Em primeiro lugar, queria agradecer ao professor Marcelo pelo convite para presidir este júri do Prémio Anual Finisterra, que é um prémio que já conta com vários anos e que tem vindo a atribuir prémios a artigos com temáticas muito diversificadas e de grande qualidade. Ao fim e ao cabo são reveladoras, de certa forma, da qualidade da ciência que se faz nas diferentes escolas que escrevem sobre geografia. Portanto, este ano partimos numa primeira fase de 23 artigos selecionados, de acordo com os critérios que temos no regulamento. Numa segunda fase desses 23 artigos foram apurados os 4 mais votados, e portanto, esses 4 mais votados foram depois analisados num conjunto de critérios, nomeadamente de qualidade científica, inovação, originalidade, metodologia e relevância dos resultados. Posso dizer-vos que a votação foi bastante competitiva e por isso este ano decidimos atribuir 2 menções honrosas e 1 prémio. Sendo assim, vou passar então ao que interessa, não é? Portanto, a primeira menção honrosa é para a Margarida Fontes, a Mariana Aguiar e o Nuno Bento do IGOT, com o tema Efeitos setoriais e territoriais da experimentação em fases iniciais de inovações energéticas, lições de 20 anos de tecnologia renováveis marinhas em Portugal. Não sei se querem dizer alguma coisa. Não foi a primeira vez que estamos na Finisterra. Sim, claro. Sim. A segunda menção honrosa vai para outro artigo, que penso que não estão cá os colegas que escreveram o artigo, mas que são colegas da Universidade da Flórida e da Universidade de Aveiro, e se calhar não vieram porque está muito mau tempo, não sei. E o artigo tem o título Valor Económico da Bicicleta à escala local, Estimativa dos potenciais impactos ambientais e energéticos e na saúde em Portugal. É do João Pedro Ferreira, Catarina Isidro, Frederico Moura e Sá e José Carlos. Finalmente, o vencedor do prémio de artigo do ano Finisterra 2022 é o artigo do Pedro Franco e da Eduarda Marques da Costa, intitulado Disparidades regionais na prestação de serviços de saúde na União Europeia, quando o território importa. Parece um pouco, não é?
Mulheres primeiro.
Pronto, então agora vamos chamar antes Marcelo Fragoso. Pronto. Bem, então boa tarde a todos e a todas e a todos. Não sei se há tudo, mas bom, a todos é disparados. É com um gosto grande que a Biblioteca e a Finisterra se associam, no caso concreto falando para a Biblioteca, mas sabendo que é assim também do lado da Finisterra, se associam para para atribuir, bom, para fazer este concurso, que depois dá o prémio de que falaremos, para fazer este concurso que se chama Livros que Contam. Já temos a correr a edição deste ano e que tem como objetivo estimular a leitura das obras da biblioteca e, portanto, das obras geográficas em versão digital ou versão física, não têm que ser as obras físicas, portanto passamos para a lógica futura, sobretudo no quadro dos nossos alunos. De resto, estando aqui muitos docentes, nós aproveitamos sempre para dizer, estimulem os vossos alunos, têm sido sobretudo alunos de mestrado e percebe-se que aderem a este concurso, consiste em fazer uma recensão de uma obra da biblioteca, propô-la a concurso e depois ver o que acontece, mas estimulem os vossos alunos nas vossas turmas a que façam recensões dos livros que vão lendo nas cadeiras e que vão lendo para as teses também. O resultado é que se divulgam os livros, estimula a leitura e há logo uma publicação, isto é, no tempo em que é tão importante haver publicações, quem fizer boas recensões, como é o caso dos 13 estudantes que foram premiados neste ano, já viram as suas recensões publicadas na Finisterra. As 3 recensões já foram publicadas. Portanto, têm desde logo este prémio da publicação. Claro que o texto das recensões passa pela normal revisão da Finisterra, nem podia ser assim, na lógica de, digamos assim, manutenção de qualidade e acreditando que o peer review é uma parte importante desse processo, para além de depois haver, enfim, um elemento simbólico que assinala também o facto de terem sido as recensões com mais qualidade. Gostávamos de dar às vezes outro tipo de prémios, mas as restrições orçamentais não permitem, e às vezes não é uma questão financeira, é poder encontrar uma rúbrica onde encaixamos o termo prémios, é difícil. Prémios é uma coisa que não encaixa nas rúbricas, por isso torna-se um bocado complicado às vezes fazer isso. Nem é tanto uma questão financeira, é uma questão de estrutura, de custos no orçamento. Bom, dito isto, se calhar passava a palavra à Ana, que esteve envolvida no júri, e nós, é verdade, e aproveitamos para agradecer aos membros do júri o trabalho que fizeram na análise das recensões que foram entregues, e esperamos tê-los outra vez no próximo ano. Agradecemos também a todos os que enviaram recensões, sendo que é uma satisfação o número ter subido quase para o dobro. Nós começámos por 4 e agora tivemos 8. E esperamos para o ano ter 16. É um pouco mais de trabalho para o júri, mas ainda no domínio das coisas execuíveis, sem ter de aumentar o número de pessoas. Ana, por favor.
Sim, também só dando aqui algumas notas do lado do júri, visto que realmente foi um grupo imparcial relativamente a quem coordena o projeto. Gostaria de apresentar o júri, portanto, para além de mim participou a professora Margarida Queiroz, o professor Sérgio Claudino e o professor Pedro Santos. O próprio júri também aumentou desde a primeira edição para a segunda e, portanto, acreditamos que vai ter que aumentar para a terceira edição. Os textos que nos chegaram, estas recensões, apresentavam já uma elevada qualidade. Chegaram-nos então estes 8 candidatos, estas 8 submissões com temas muito diversos, entre a questão do despovoamento, do planeamento do transporte, das cidades sustentáveis, alterações climáticas, entre outros, e foi com muita curiosidade e interesse que o próprio júri, que também veem que é muito diverso, leu estes textos, muitas vezes fora das nossas áreas temáticas, e portanto é uma coisa que nós cientistas poderíamos fazer mais vezes, é tentar sair um pouco da nossa bolha, e foi isso que nos foi permitido com esta avaliação. Portanto, a nível da dinâmica da avaliação, para nós foi muito prazerosa. Como disse, os textos apresentaram uma boa qualidade, daí termos publicado 3 e eventualmente serão publicados outros que estão em processo de revisão, e esperamos que esta iniciativa continue. Queremos dar os parabéns ao professor Jorge Malheiros por ter assumido e avançar, mas especialmente à Sandra Domingos, que operacionaliza esta dinâmica e muitas outras por trás da biblioteca e da Finisterra. E portanto agradecer o vosso convite e o vosso apoio, e dar também obviamente uma nota final, dar os parabéns a todos os concorrentes a todos os colegas que submeteram algum texto, quer sejam publicados ou não, e que obviamente, tal como a professora Eduarda dizia, publiquem na Finisterra. Eu também convido a que todos os alunos proponham textos, recensões ou algo maior na Finisterra. Muitos parabéns a todos. Vamos agora saber quem são os vencedores.
Sim. Sim. Ok. Vamos anunciar os, digamos, 3 vencedores, os vencedores de facto, e o texto que ficou em terceiro lugar, como houve 2 primeiros, depois temos só o terceiro, na lógica habitual, todos eles publicados. Queria só dizer uma coisa, porque acho que é da mais elementar justiça. A Sandra não é só operacional. Eu não sei de quem partiu a ideia concreta de fazer as coisas nestes moldes, mas dificilmente diria que a ideia é minha. Não sei se foi só da Sandra, mas o que é certo é que é do nosso diálogo que depois saiu isto que nós temos aqui hoje, e a questão das recensões, o acordo que fizemos com a Finisterra, e que já vem da edição anterior, para produzir este trabalho. Portanto, é claramente um trabalho conjunto, e eu acho que isso era um primeiro aspecto. O outro que quero realçar também, é muito interessante ver que as recensões são feitas em línguas diferentes, as 3. Uma, que será a primeira que vamos falar, está escrita em português, e as 2 primeiras, uma está escrita em inglês, outra escrita em francês. O que, para mim, pessoalmente, é uma coisa significativa, porque mostra esta dimensão de diversidade linguística que a Finisterra vai mantendo e que abre possibilidades a estudantes que não só aos estudantes portugueses, mas a estudantes de outros sítios, escreverem outras línguas. É verdade que é difícil termos texto em polaco ou em hindi, porque temos menos leitores e é mais difícil, mas temos textos em francês, e apesar de tudo, é uma componente aqui de diversidade. E assim, sem mais delongas, queria então felicitar o Simone Passalacqua, estudante de mestrado, pela recensão que fez ao livro Polífemo Segador, La Geografia e los Modelos del Mundo, de Franco Farinelli. É a tradução do original italiano, alguns anos depois, em espanhol. Portanto, parabéns, Simone.
Obrigado. Obrigado.
E não sei se consegues ver, mas está aqui o teu certificado, não é? Está aqui o teu certificado, e passava-te a palavra para poderes dizer alguma coisa, se faz favor.
Sim, conseguiu me ouvir, sim? Ok. Eu queria só agradecer pela oportunidade de escrever sobre um texto que pessoalmente amo muito. Confesso que, na verdade, a primeira versão foi escrita em italiano, depois foi traduzida em português para concorrer, mas o Polifemo Segador de Farinelli foi para mim um texto muito importante, porque representa um dos geógrafos mais importantes da tradição italiana de geografia, e é um texto que faz viajar muito na relação entre o mundo, o mapa e esta concepção do labirinto, que pode ser um instrumento para ler o mundo, a complexidade do mundo contemporâneo. Então foi um desafio grande, porque o livro é muito filosófico também, mas agradeço por ter apreciado o trabalho que fez na crítica ao livro. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Simone. E o júri decidiu atribuir o primeiro lugar ex aequo a 2 recensões. A primeira, da Alicia Wash, diz assim, ou Vash, não sei. Alicia Vash, e é uma recensão do livro World Making After Empire, The Rise and Fall of Self-Determination, escrito por Adam Getashiu. Parabéns, Alicia, e também está online, e gostaria que dissesse algumas palavras também sobre o livro, ou sobre a recensão, se faz favor.
Yeah, Thank you very much. I think what I wanted to say first, I will speak in English as I wrote in English. I'm calling from Germany. That I really like this concurso because it was a really good chance to have a first publication. For me, it's the first publication, and I think it's really nice that the teachers encourage us to take part in such thing, because the prerequisites to take part are not really high, and it was a good challenge. I think it's doable for many people, so I hope many can join in the future. And about the book, I think for me it was a very new topic because I'm from environmental sciences and from climate ethics, but I still wanted to get deeper into colonial history, and Adam Gatichou really shows nicely in her book how after the big empires of Spain and France and Great Britain and many more, the nation states were not the only option that was tried out, but that many countries that had been oppressed before, Black countries mostly, tried to form Pan-African unions, for example, and international collaborations, and that was a very promising project that in the end failed. And it was really interesting for me to learn. I think the book is not really for everyone, maybe it's for scholars only, but I learned a lot, even though it cost me a lot. And I think it teaches us a lot about the future, to learn about historic development of international politics and international cooperation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and sorry for having spoken in Portuguese, but well, I'm in the Portuguese atmosphere and I forgot that, well, you use English as the media for communication with us. Okay, so now...
I understand.
Thank you. Now, finally, last but not least, as sometimes is said, the other first place, o outro primeiro lugar, vou deixar o inglês, não sei se a Juliette Galaviel fala português. Juliette, falas português? Ok, então Juliette fala português. E queria só um petit moment. O livro que foi objeto de recensão chama-se Géographie et impérialisme de la Suisse au Congo, Anti-restauration géographique et conquête coloniale, e foi escrito por um investigador suíço que trabalha em França, Fábio Rossinelli. Alors, c'est à toi, et félicitations. Et si tu peux nous dire quelques mots sur la livre. Merci. Ah, ok. Embora não possamos comparar, damos mais algumas coisas. Alicia. Ah, sim. Mas está certo, é para ficar com a mão livre. Para poder... O livro do estudante da Portoteca, só para ver os comentários da festa. Não deixa de ser interessante que há aqui uma forte visão da geografia crítica, e neste caso pós-colonial. Nos dois primeiros prémios, um de uma linha francesa e suíça, outro de uma linha anglo-saxónica, os livros que foram objeto de recensão. É muito interessante esta coincidência. e em 2 línguas diferentes. E também é bom porque isto dá a conhecer livros fora do mainstream. Nós tivemos um livro produzido em Itália, um livro produzido na Suíça, embora a investigação seja em França, e depois um livro produzido nos Estados Unidos, e portanto mais no centro habitual de conhecimento. Pronto, obrigado. Digam aos vossos alunos para se inscreverem para este ano. Já está aberto e anunciado, a Sandra já tratou disso. Até abril podem enviar as recenções. Acho que alguém deve vir encerrar e não deve ser eu. Talvez o professor Marcelo, não é? O nosso professor Marcelo.
Pronto, eu só queria dizer que estou satisfeito com esta edição da 2023 da Lição. Queria aqui também agradecer o trabalho, não apenas da preparação da lição, mas também destas iniciativas da Biblioteca e da Finisterra, e o contributo de muitas pessoas que não aparecem aqui, mas que deram um contributo importante, e obrigado pelo seu compromisso e sentido e identificação com a Finisterra, que eu acho que é muito importante, continue a surgir nos jovens investigadores, porque eles são o futuro da publicação científica na Finisterra, e portanto fiquei muito satisfeito, nomeadamente também agora pela adesão dos estudantes de ensino no grau de mestrado, doutoramento, que estão a registar um interesse crescente pela Finisterra. Muito obrigado, e dizer-vos só que já estamos a pensar na edição 2024, e gostava de pedir ao presidente do IGOT umas palavras.
Pois, muito boa tarde a todos e a todas. Isto é mesmo um cargo político, é horrível, apareço só para fechar, não é? Mas tive o dia todo noutras coisas. Mas não deixo de fazer questão de aparecer. Em primeiro lugar, para dar um abraço ao Marcelo e a toda a equipa da Finisterra, que, enfim, que levam às costas esta tarefa. Realmente é mais pesada do que se julga, porque são muitos artigos, são muitas submissões, podiam ser mais, mas são muitas, e depois há todo o trabalho associado à revisão. Portanto, temos que agradecer sempre aos autores, aos revisores e sobretudo aos leitores, não é? Uma revista é feita pelos leitores. E, portanto, parabéns ao grupo que organiza, cumprimentar o diretor do CEG, que continua a investir, mas pode investir mais ainda na Finisterra, não é? É sempre importante isso. Um abraço também para o Jean-Paul Rodrigue. Thanks very much. Very interesting keynote lecture for sure, but I'm sorry for not being here. But we had the opportunity to talk about your topic. Na verdade, a Finisterra Annual Lecture já vai numa série, não sei quantas, mas já são muitas. Começaram há cerca de 8 anos, 2016, está quase a fazer 2016, com a Margarida Queiroz, seguem agora, e é um momento alto do Centro de Estudos Geográficos, e temos sempre convidados ou convidadas de algum prestígio internacional, e isso é muito, muito importante para nós. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. Parece o professor Marcelo a traduzir coisas básicas do inglês para o português. A inspiração do professor Marcelo, o nosso professor Marcelo. Só falta... espera, também tenho aqui o telefone, se eu preciso. Pronto, então, não vou... Como sou a última coisa entre vocês e o jantar, não vou-me calar. cumprimentar todos e todas, muito obrigado e são sempre muito bem-vindos à nossa casa. Muito obrigado.